Okay, we're going to work with some measurements here and look at this problem that we've actually worked on before, but this one comes out a little more challenging because of the number of boards and spaces, okay? So we're going to have to go to decimals. So this one we're going to use decimals, but in the end we want to take it back to fractions, all right? So we noticed here we have how many boards? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 boards. Okay, so we got 10 boards in our fence here. And we have 11 spaces because there's one more space than there is boards, okay? Because there's a space to the left of each one and then one more space to the right. All right, so what we need to do here is we want to even these out. We want all the spaces to be equal, but we want to answer as a fraction. Okay, but it's going to turn out, because we have to divide by 11 in the end, that we're not going to get a nice fraction. So what we want to do is we want to start by converting these all to decimals. So we need 2 3/4. Well, 2 3/4 we're familiar with. That's 2.75 inches. And 5/8, 46 5/8, well, that one we're maybe not so familiar with. So we can go to our calculator and do 5 divided by 8, and that's going to give us, let's see if we can see it here. There it is, 0.625. Okay, so this is 46.625. Now, the same steps that we did before is what we're going to do now. The only difference is what we're going to do at the end, okay? So let's go through the same steps we did before. Let's find the total of the boards in between, not the post at the end. We're not worried about these posts. We're just talking about the total of the boards in between, all right? Total board width, we might say. That's the first thing we need, and that's going to be 10 times 2.75. Well, that's kind of nice because when we multiply decimals by 10, it just moves the decimal point over. Remember that from past experience, hopefully? So 2.75 times 10 is 27.5 inches. Great, so we got the total board width. Now we can find the total of all the spaces by subtracting that from the total distance in between the posts. Okay, the total space, excuse me, got a lisp, 46.25 minus 27.5. All right, let's see what that is. Yeah, we could probably do that with some practice, 46 minus 27. Well, 47 minus 27 is 20. This is 46. 46 is going to be one less than 20. It's going to be 19. And then 0.625. Think of this as 625. Think of this as 500. 625 minus 500. We can probably do that. Now you can go to calculator if you need to, but it's good practice to avoid that there. Okay. So we got the total space, 19.125. Now we need one space here. So we're going to take that total space. And how many spaces do we have? Well, we had 11 total. So this is going to come out to be a pretty ugly fraction. So we divide by 11. There, we're definitely going to need a calculator for that, all right? So we're going to take 19.125, and we're going to divide that by 11. And we get 1.7386, okay? All right, so our space is 1 inch and change. Well, the question is, we know we got 1 whole inch, but we want this to be, we want to figure out how many 16ths. So 1.7386. So here's the new thing. We want to change this to 1 16ths. Notice I put this squiggly equal sign because this means approximately. Well, what we're going to do is this. We just want to work with this decimal number. So I'm going to go over to the calculator, okay? And in the calculator, by the way, this is just on a web page. Go to desmos.com and use the scientific calculator is best. They have a graphing one as well, but find the scientific there. Okay, so here we're going to take that answer, ANS, there's answer. Every scientific calculator will have something like that, okay? And so we just want to subtract off the whole number. We just want the decimal. So see, I just subtracted this 1 because I want to deal with that decimal. I got a whole inch and some fractions of an inch. Now the question is, how much of an inch is that? How many sixteenths? Well, what we need to do is multiply that by 16. This tells us that 0.73 is 11.8 sixteenths. 11.8 sixteenths. So we have 1 and 11.8-ish sixteenths. Well, we want that to be a whole number. We want to go to the nearest whole number, so we're going to erase this 11.8 and round that off to 12. 8 rounds off. Remember, when you're rounding, whatever number we cut off, okay, this first number, if it's 5 or bigger, we round up to 12. If it was less than 5, we just cut it off. All right? So 12 sixteenths, and then the last thing we'll do, 4 goes into both of these. We can simplify these fractions, divide by 4, and we get 1 3/4 inch. Okay? So if we want to get this to the nearest 16th, well, that's 3/4. 12 sixteenths, which is 3/4. Okay, so when we say round to nearest 16th, if we simplify, that's great. Okay, so we go to decimals, we work out the whole thing in decimals, and then in the end, we'll change it back to a fraction. All right, let's do one more gap problem here. So we have this part where we're going to drill some holes in it. Okay, and we want to have 8 gaps. 8 gaps between the circles. Okay, we want to find the nearest 16th of an inch. All right, we're going to find this x and this y here. Okay, so to do that, we got a radius of 7/8. Okay, 7/8. We'll pull out the calculator here and find that as on the calculator as a decimal. So 7/8, and some of these you'll get familiar with. So 7 divided by 8, okay, 0.875. So this is 0.875. Now that's the radius. We're going to need to double that to find the diameter. Okay, so if you remember from past math classes, the radius times 2 is the diameter. Okay, so that's important here. So we're going to need to take that thing there, that answer times 2. Okay, 1.75. All right, so we have 1.75 is the diameter. So we've got all of these gaps here that we need to figure out. We get a different color there. Okay, we'll do it in blue. All these blue gaps. Okay, there's 8 of them, and there's 7 holes, right? Yeah. Okay, so we have 7 holes, and we have 8 gaps or spaces. All right. Now, let's find the total of the diameters. All right, because we know that. It's the total of what we know. So we're going to start with what we know. Total of diameters. Well, we have 7, and they're 1.75 each. Okay, so let's go to our calculator, and we've got 7 times 1.75. Whoops, 5. Okay, that's 12.25. So again, we're just working in decimals. 12.25. Now we know that if we take all of that away, all of these diameters add up to 12.25. We know the whole thing is 22 3/8. 22 point, and that's, you can plug in your calculator. 3 divided by 8 is 375. All right. So we're going to take the total of all the gaps. Okay, in other words, all the blue piece, the little blue lines added up together. Okay, let's find the total gaps. And so that's going to be the whole thing, 22.375 minus all the diameters, 12.25. Okay, 22 minus 12 is 10. 0.375 minus this, well, throw a 0 because it's a decimal. You can do that. How about this? Again, you could use a calculator, but watch, I bet you can do it without. 375 minus 250, that's 125. All right, so 10.125, that's all the gaps. Now we need one gap. Okay, one gap is 10.125 divided by 8. Okay, so there's 8 gaps. So let's take 10.125. 10.125 divided by 8. Okay, and we get that big old number. Okay, 1.6265 that is. Okay, all right, so one gap is 1.265. At least record 3 decimal places and leave more in your calculator, okay? Now, that's one gap. Well, we need to find this x. This x distance is a gap plus the radius. You see, it just goes to the radius. So we need to add 0.875 to get x there. Okay, so x is going to be the 1.265. Now notice I rounded that. This is approximately. Plus the radius of 0.875. So I'm going to go to the calculator, and I'm going to take that gap, but I still have that in my calculator. So I want to use that whole thing, not what I wrote down, because what I wrote down is not exactly right. And I'm going to add 0.875 to that. Okay? And I get 2.140625. So I get 2 inches and change 2.14. Well, that's going to be 2 whole inches. Let's get that as a fraction. How many 16ths is that? Well, what we need to do is similar process that we did before. I'm going to take that number here, and I'm going to subtract off the 2 because I just want the decimal. And then the question to ask is how many 16ths is that? So I'm going to take that answer times 16. And I get 2.25. We were going to round that to the nearest whole number, so that's about 2 16ths. And last but not least, we can simplify the fraction. Okay, 2 1/8. Okay, so x is 2 1/8. The key again is to get the decimal and then multiply by 16 to change it. Now, last but not least, this y distance, notice this y distance is a gap plus a radius plus another radius. Well, x was a gap plus a radius. This was one gap plus one radius. So all we need to do is just add one more radius to get y. And the radius is 7/8, okay, or 14/16. We could go back to a decimal, but might as well just say this. Y is 2 1/8 plus, well, what do we say? 7/8, right? Okay, 7/8. So that would be 1/8 and 7/8 is a whole, so that would be 3 inches. All right, there you go. Again, this will take a little practice, but we'll get used to it. We change it to a decimal. We get a decimal answer. We cut off the 2 in the calculator, and then we found that decimal, change that decimal into a fraction by multiplying by 16. All right? Great job. We'll work on that more. You'll get it. Keep up the good work.